March 15th, 2023. A Tuesday morning in the Hollywood Hills, unseasonably warm for spring. Two hikers found her body just off Runyon Canyon Trail, partially hidden in the dense brush 20 feet below the main path. She was 24 years old. Her name was Sophia Chen. 6 weeks earlier, Sophia had been living in Phoenix, Arizona, working as a server at a downtown restaurant and auditioning for local commercials whenever she could afford the headshots. She had studied theater at Arizona State University, graduated with honors, and spent 3 years watching her college friends move to Los Angeles while she stayed behind, saving money. Her parents had emigrated from Taiwan in the 1990s. They wanted her to pursue something stable. She wanted to act. She was always the performer, her mother, Lin Chen, would later recall. Even as a little girl, she was putting on shows in our living room. We worried about her going to LA, but she was 24. We couldn't stop her. Sophia had finally saved $8,000. Not much, but enough for a security deposit and a few months of rent while she found her footing. She had been scrolling through Facebook in late January when she saw the post in an LA acting community group. A casting call for an independent film shooting in the spring. They needed fresh faces. Non-union. Pay was minimal, but it was a real credit. She submitted her headshot and resumed through the online form. The response came 3 days later. The email was professional, cleanly formatted, with a signature that included a logo for Pacific Talent Management. The sender introduced himself as Richard Kozlov, talent scout and manager. He had seen her submission for the indie film project. Unfortunately, that role had been cast, but he was impressed by her look and her training. He wanted to meet with her if she was serious about relocating to Los Angeles. Sophia read the email 4 times. She Googled the company name and found a basic website with stock photos and generic text about artist representation. Nothing suspicious, but nothing particularly impressive either. She Googled Richard Kozlov and found a LinkedIn profile showing 20 years in the entertainment industry, various production companies and management firms listed. The photo showed a man in his early 50s, neatly trimmed beard, expensive-looking blazer. She wanted to believe it was real. "I told her to be careful," said Marcus Webb, her boyfriend of 2 years. "I said those talent scout things are usually scams. But she showed me the website, the LinkedIn profile. It looked legitimate enough, and she was so excited. I didn't want to crush her dream." Sophia emailed back, expressing interest. Richard responded within hours. They scheduled a video call for the following week. When the call happened, Richard was everything the email had suggested. Professional, knowledgeable, asking intelligent questions about her training and her goals. He explained that Pacific Talent Management was a boutique firm, smaller than the big agencies, but more personal. He worked with emerging talent, building their portfolios and getting them in rooms they couldn't access alone. "What you need to understand about this industry," he told her on that call, his voice smooth and confident, "is that talent isn't enough. Everyone here has talent. What separates success from failure is representation, guidance, and opportunity. I can provide all 3. The call lasted 45 minutes. He never asked her for money. He said if she moved to LA and wanted to sign with him, they could discuss terms then. No pressure. But he believed she had potential, and he wanted to help her realize it. Sophia made her decision that night. She gave her restaurant 2 weeks' notice. She told her parents she was moving to Los Angeles. They were unhappy, but not surprised. She had been talking about this for years. "We asked her to wait," Lin Chen said. "Just a few more months, save more money." But she said this was her chance. Someone believed in her. How could we say no to that? On February 14th, 2023, Sophia loaded her Honda Civic with everything she owned and drove 5 hours west to Los Angeles. She had arranged a room in a shared apartment in North Hollywood through a roommate matching website. $300 a week, month-to-month lease. 2 other girls lived there, both servers, both aspiring actresses. The apartment was small and worn, but it had parking and it was in the valley, which meant it was affordable. She texted Richard the day she arrived. He congratulated her and suggested they meet for coffee the following week to discuss next steps. She spent those first days exploring the city, walking the Hollywood Walk of Fame like every new arrival, taking selfies in front of the Hollywood sign visible in the distance. She applied to restaurants and got hired immediately at a wine bar in Studio City. Los Angeles needed servers. It always did. The coffee meeting happened on February 22nd at a Starbucks in Burbank. Richard arrived exactly on time, dressed casually but expensively. Dark jeans, fitted shirt, leather jacket that probably cost more than Sophia's monthly rent. He was charming in person, asking about her drive, her new apartment, settling into the city. He ordered both their drinks and insisted on paying. They talked for 90 minutes. He explained his business model. He represented about 20 actors, mostly emerging talent like her. He took 15% of anything they booked, standard industry rate. But he didn't charge upfront fees. No retainers, no reading fees, none of the predatory practices she had read about online. "My success depends on your success," he explained. "If you don't work, I don't get paid. So, I'm invested in making sure you work." He asked to see her current headshots. She showed him the ones she had used in Phoenix. He frowned slightly, not unkindly. He said they were fine for Arizona, but wouldn't cut it. In Los Angeles, she needed new headshots. Professionally done, expensive. He knew a photographer he worked with regularly. The session would cost $1,200. Sophia felt her stomach drop. She didn't have $1,200 to spare. Richard must have seen her expression change. He smiled reassuringly. He said not to worry. They could work something out. The photographer owed him favors. Maybe they could get the session for $800. She could pay in installments if needed. "This is an investment in yourself," he said. "You can't walk into auditions with amateur headshots. This is Los Angeles. You're competing with thousands of people who all have professional materials." She agreed. She didn't know what else to do. He seemed to know the industry, and she was new. She had to trust someone. "I should have seen it then," Marcus Webb said later. "The headshot thing, that's classic predator behavior. Get them to invest money so they feel committed. Create financial pressure. But we were in Arizona and she was in LA, and I couldn't be there to see the red flags." The headshot session was scheduled for March 3rd. Richard texted her the address. It was a studio in a converted warehouse in the Arts District, downtown Los Angeles. She drove there on a Saturday morning, nervous and excited. The photographer's name was Danny. He was younger than she expected, maybe 30, friendly and professional. The session took 3 hours. Different outfits, different backgrounds, different expressions. Danny seemed to know exactly what he was doing. At the end, he said she was very photogenic, that she had a great look. The photos would be ready in a week. Richard would send over the selection and she could choose her favorites. She paid Danny $800 in cash, money she had withdrawn from her savings account the night before. It hurt to see that balance drop. But Richard was right. This was an investment. You had to spend money to make money. The photos arrived in her email on March 9th. They were beautiful. Professional, polished, exactly what she had hoped for. Richard called her that evening to discuss which ones to use for her portfolio. He suggested 3 different looks: commercial-friendly, dramatic theatrical, and high-fashion editorial. "You're going to book with these," he assured her. "I'm already thinking about submissions. There's a commercial casting next week for a tech company. You'd be perfect." Sophia felt validated. The money had been worth it. This was happening. She was becoming a real actress in Los Angeles. 2 days later, Richard texted her. He wanted to discuss her career trajectory. Coffee shops were too public, too many interruptions. Would she mind meeting at his office? He gave her an address in Laurel Canyon, up in the hills above the city. She had never been to his office before. All their meetings had been in public places. But that made sense. He was probably busy, meeting with clients all day. Now she was signed with him. Now she had professional headshots. It was time to get serious about strategy. "Looking back," said Detective Maria Reyes, who would eventually lead the investigation, "that was the moment everything changed. The isolation started there. Private locations instead of public spaces. He was testing boundaries, seeing what she would accept." March 11th, 2023. Sophia drove up into Laurel Canyon on a Thursday afternoon. The address Richard had given her was a small house perched on a hillside, separated from neighbors by dense vegetation and steep terrain. The house was modern, expensive-looking, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered sweeping views of the city below. Richard greeted her at the door. He was dressed more casually than usual. Jeans and a t-shirt, barefoot. He explained that he worked from home most days, that this was his office and residence combined. Many people in the industry lived this way in Los Angeles. Overhead was expensive. Inside, the house was minimalist and clean. Leather furniture, abstract art on the walls, expensive-looking electronics. He offered her wine. She hesitated. It was 3 in the afternoon, and she had to work the dinner shift at the restaurant. He laughed and said just 1 glass, to celebrate her new headshots and the beginning of her career. She accepted. What she didn't know was that this had all happened before. Richard Kozlov was not a talent scout. He was a predator who had perfected his system over 7 years and 11 victims. The wine was red, expensive, poured into oversized glasses. They sat on the couch, and he pulled up his laptop. He showed her breakdowns for upcoming auditions, explained which ones he thought she should pursue. He asked about her comfort level with different types of roles. Would she do nudity? Romantic scenes? She said she was open to most things, that she trusted the director and the context. He nodded approvingly. He said that was the right attitude. Actors who were too precious about their boundaries didn't work in this town. You had to be professional. You had to be willing to commit fully to the character. The wine made her feel warm and relaxed. She hadn't eaten much that day. Richard refilled her glass without asking. She didn't object. She was excited, talking about her dreams, the roles she wanted to play someday. He was attentive, asking questions, seeming genuinely interested in her goals. He mentioned a project he was currently working on. An independent film, very small budget, shooting in 2 weeks. One of his actresses had just dropped out due to a scheduling conflict. The role was small but crucial. A party scene, some dialogue, maybe 20 minutes of screen time total. But it would be her first real credit. Sophia felt her heart race. This was exactly what she needed. She asked about the role, the story, the director. Richard smiled. He said there was one component she should know about. The scene involved partial nudity. Tasteful, artistic, important to the narrative. but it required someone confident in their body, someone professional. He wouldn't submit her if she wasn't comfortable. She felt the wine clouding her judgment. She tried to focus. Partial nudity. Her first role. She had told herself she would consider nudity if the project was right. Was this the right project? She didn't even know the title or who else was involved. "I can tell you're uncertain," Richard said, his voice gentle. "That's completely understandable. Tell you what, let me show you similar scenes from other films so you can see the tone we're going for. This isn't exploitation. This is art." He moved closer to her on the couch. He opened a video file on his laptop. The scene showed two actors in an intimate situation, tastefully shot, nothing overtly explicit. He narrated what he liked about the framing, the lighting, the emotional vulnerability. His hand rested on her knee. She noticed but said nothing. Maybe this was normal. Maybe she was being too sensitive. "The thing about scenes like this," he continued, "is that actors need to be comfortable with their bodies. There's often a rehearsal process. The director will want to see what you're capable of, how you move, how you present yourself. It's very technical, very professional." She finished her second glass of wine. The room felt too warm. His hand was still on her knee. Something felt wrong, but she couldn't articulate what. He was her manager. He was trying to help her. She didn't want to seem difficult or ungrateful. "Actually," she said, standing up suddenly, "I should probably go. I have my shift tonight and I need to get ready." Richard's expression changed for just a moment. Something cold flickered across his face. Then the smile returned. Professional, understanding. He said, of course, he didn't want to keep her. They could discuss the project later. He walked her to the door. As she left, he said, "Think about what we discussed. But don't think too long. These opportunities move fast." Sophia drove down the winding canyon roads, feeling confused and uneasy. The wine had made everything fuzzy. She couldn't tell if she had misread the situation or if something inappropriate had actually happened. His hand on her knee, the intimate video, the way he had moved closer. Or maybe she was paranoid. Maybe this was just how the industry worked, and she was too inexperienced to understand. She didn't tell anyone about the meeting. Not Marcus, not her roommates, not her parents. She felt embarrassed, like she had done something wrong, even though she couldn't say what. "Victims often don't report these early boundary violations," explained Dr. Sarah Klein, a forensic psychologist who consulted on the case. "They've been groomed to believe that their discomfort is their own failing, that they need to be more professional or more sophisticated. The predator has already planted seeds of self-doubt." 3 days passed. Richard texted her twice, casual messages asking how she was doing, mentioning other potential auditions. She responded politely, but briefly. She wanted to maintain the professional relationship, but something held her back from engaging fully. On March 14th, he called her. His tone was different. Less warm, more businesslike. He said they needed to talk about her commitment level. He had spent time and energy promoting her to casting directors. He had connected her with his photographer at a discount. Now he had a concrete opportunity, and she was being difficult. Sophia felt guilty immediately. He was right. He had helped her. She was being ungrateful. "I'm sorry," she said. "I do want to work. I'm committed." His voice softened. He said he understood that she was new to the industry, that it could be overwhelming. But if she wanted to succeed, she needed to trust him. He had been doing this for 2 decades. He knew what he was doing. He suggested they meet again to discuss the film project in detail. This time, he would have the script available, She could read the scenes, see for herself that it was legitimate. He could also introduce her to the director via video call, so she could ask questions directly. She agreed. They scheduled for the next evening, March 15th, at his house again. She told herself this was professional. She was being paranoid before. She needed to approach this like an adult, like a serious actress. That afternoon, she finished her shift at the restaurant and drove back to North Hollywood. She showered, changed clothes, ate a light dinner. She thought about calling Marcus, but decided against it. He would just worry. He would tell her not to go. But she was an adult making professional decisions about her career. At 7 p.m., she drove back up into Laurel Canyon. The sun was setting, casting orange light across the Hollywood Hills. From up here, Los Angeles looked beautiful and endless. A city of possibility spread out below like a promise. She never made it home that night. When Sophia didn't show up for her shift at the restaurant the next evening, her manager tried calling. No answer. When she didn't come home that night, her roommates assumed she was with a friend or boyfriend. They didn't know much about her personal life. When she didn't appear the following day either, one of them finally texted to make sure everything was okay. No response. On March 17th, her roommates called the police to report her missing. The LAPD took the report but explained that adults had the right to disappear. She had only been gone 2 days. She wasn't a minor. There was no evidence of foul play. They would file the report, but they couldn't actively investigate yet. Marcus Webb called from Arizona, frantic. He had been texting Sophia for 2 days with no response. Her parents called, terrified, barely able to speak English through their panic. The police repeated the same information. Wait. Adults disappear in Los Angeles all the time. They usually turn up. On the morning of March 21st, the hikers found her body. Detective Maria Reyes caught the case. She had worked homicide for 12 years, seen hundreds of bodies, but this one struck her immediately. The positioning was wrong. The location was wrong. Sophia Chen's body was fully clothed. No visible signs of sexual assault. But she was lying in brush 20 feet below the main hiking trail. People didn't die there naturally. They didn't fall there accidentally. Someone had placed her there. The coroner's initial examination revealed the cause of death: asphyxiation. Bruising around the neck suggested strangulation. Toxicology would take weeks, but preliminary tests showed high levels of alcohol and traces of GHB, a date rape drug. Her phone was missing. Her car was never found. Reyes started with the basics. Who was Sophia Chen? Where had she been? Who had she known in Los Angeles? The roommates provided limited information. They didn't know her well. She had moved in 5 weeks ago, worked at a restaurant, was trying to break into acting. She had mentioned something about a manager or talent scout, but they didn't remember a name. Marcus Webb flew to Los Angeles. He was devastated, angry, desperate for answers. He told Reyes about Richard Kozlov, showed her the email chains and LinkedIn profile. Reyes ran the name. Nothing came up in criminal databases. She found the LinkedIn profile Marcus had found. She found the Pacific Talent Management website. She called the phone number listed on the website. Disconnected. She drove to the business address listed. It was a UPS store mailbox. Richard Kozlov, as that name, didn't exist. This is when we realized we were dealing with a serial predator, Reyes said. Everything was fake. The company, the identity, probably even the headshot photographer. This person had created an entire infrastructure to lure young women. Reyes obtained Sophia's phone records from her carrier. The last activity was on March 15th at 7:43 p.m. Cell tower data placed the phone in Laurel Canyon. The last call made was at 6:55 p.m., a 15-second call to her mother. Lin Chen confirmed this. Sophia had called to say hi, said she was on her way to a meeting with her manager. She sounded happy. That was the last time they spoke. Reyes drove to the address Richard had given Sophia for his office. The house was a short-term rental, currently occupied by a German family on vacation. The property manager confirmed that the house had been rented for 3 months, starting in January, paid in cash by a man named David Morrison. The property manager had never met David Morrison in person. Everything was handled through email and a key lockbox. Security cameras in the area were limited. Laurel Canyon was residential, wealthy, private. People didn't install cameras pointed at the street. Reyes found one neighbor 2 houses down who had a doorbell camera. The footage from March 15th showed a Honda Civic driving up the canyon at 7:04 p.m. Sophia's car, it showed. The same car driving back down at 11:37 p.m., 4 hours later. But the driver wasn't Sophia Chen. The footage was grainy, shot in low light. But the figure behind the wheel was male, larger than Sophia's small frame. Reyes pulled the headshot photographer next. She found Danny through Sophia's bank records. The $800 cash withdrawal on March 3rd, the location in the Arts District. She visited every photography studio in that area until she found one that remembered a young Asian woman who had come in for headshots. But Danny didn't exist either. The studio confirmed they had rented the space to a freelance photographer for a day session on March 3rd. He had paid cash. His name was Jason Lee. They had his email and phone number. Both were fake. He was using different names with different victims, Reyes explained. David Morrison for the rental house, Richard Kozlov online, Jason Lee for the photography studio. We were dealing with someone sophisticated, experienced, careful. Reyes expanded her investigation. If this predator had operated in Los Angeles for years, there would be other victims. She started searching missing persons databases, unsolved murders, any young women who had disappeared or died under suspicious circumstances after arriving in Los Angeles to pursue entertainment careers. She found 7 possible matches over 6 years. All women between 22 and 26, all new to Los Angeles, all aspiring actresses. 3 had been found dead, ruled as suicides or overdoses. 4 were still missing. One case stood out. Jessica Martinez, 23, from Dallas, Texas, found dead in Griffith Park in 2021. Cause of death, drug overdose. Investigators at the time had ruled it accidental, another tragic case of a young person getting in over their head with Los Angeles' drug culture. But Reyes saw the pattern now. Jessica had moved to LA 3 months before her death. Her family said she had been excited about connecting with a talent manager. They didn't remember his name. Her phone had never been recovered. The investigation had been minimal. Reyes reopened the case. She interviewed Jessica's family, her friends from Dallas. One friend remembered Jessica mentioning headshots, how expensive they were, how her new manager had connected her with a photographer who gave her a discount. The pattern was becoming clear. Find vulnerable young women online, gain their trust, lure them to Los Angeles, take their money for fake headshots, isolate them, murder them. But who was he? The real identity remained elusive. The break came from a surviving victim. Reyes issued a press release, carefully worded, asking anyone who had been contacted by Richard Kozlov or Pacific Talent Management to come forward. Within 3 days, she received 47 responses. Most were dead ends, women who had received suspicious emails and ignored them. But one response was different. Her name was Amanda Price. She was 26, living in Pasadena. working as a dental hygienist now. 3 years ago, she had been an aspiring actress. She had been contacted by Richard Kozlov. She had met with him. She had gone to his house in Laurel Canyon. She had escaped. Reyes met with Amanda at her apartment. Amanda was shaking as she told her story. In 2022, she had moved to Los Angeles from Seattle. She had connected with Richard Kozlov online, the same pattern. Headshots, meetings, building trust. He had invited her to his house to discuss a film role. She had gone. He had given her wine. She had started feeling strange, dizzy, disconnected. "I remember thinking something was wrong," Amanda said. "The wine shouldn't have affected me that much. I hadn't drunk that much. But I could barely stand." Richard had suggested she lie down, that she wasn't feeling well. He had led her toward a bedroom. Amanda's survival instinct had kicked in. She had pushed past him, stumbled toward the front door, managed to get outside. She had run down the hill, barefoot, until she reached a house with lights on. The residents had called police. But when police arrived at Richard's house 20 minutes later, he was gone. The house was empty. No furniture, no belongings, nothing. Just an empty rental. Police had filed a report but hadn't pursued it aggressively. Amanda couldn't identify the substance in the wine. She hadn't been injured. Richard's identity was fake. The trail went cold. "I blamed myself," Amanda said, crying now. "I thought I'd been stupid. I stopped pursuing acting. I didn't tell anyone the full story because I felt ashamed. Now I know he did this to other women. Now I know some of them didn't get away." Reyes asked Amanda to work with a sketch artist. Together, they created a composite drawing of Richard Kozlov. The image was distributed to media outlets across California. The response was immediate. 6 more women came forward. All had been contacted by the same man using different names: Thomas Kane, Michael Chen, David Brooks. The names changed, but the face, the approach, the pattern remained consistent. One woman, Nicole Foster, provided the crucial detail. She was a makeup artist, not an actress, but she had encountered the man at a networking event in 2019. He had introduced himself as Michael Chen, producer. They had talked briefly. Later that week, she had seen him at a restaurant in Silver Lake. But he was with someone else, and when she had approached to say hello, he had pretended not to recognize her. He had been using a different name. She thought it was strange, but had dismissed it. What mattered was that Nicole had taken a photo at the networking event, a group shot that included Michael Chen. She still had it. Reyes now had an actual photograph. They ran the face through facial recognition databases. They got a hit. His real name was Robert James Hawthorne, 51 years old, originally from Portland, Oregon. He had no criminal record in California. But when Reyes expanded the search nationwide, a pattern emerged. Arrests in Oregon in 2008 for fraud. Arrests in Nevada in 2012 for identity theft. Restraining orders from 3 different women. A restraining order was filed in Arizona in 2015. He had been moving from state to state, changing identities, targeting young women, for over 15 years. Reyes obtained a warrant for his arrest, but Robert James Hawthorne had vanished again. The Laurel Canyon house had been vacated March 16th, one day after Sophia's murder. The property manager confirmed that David Morrison had sent an email saying he needed to leave early due to a family emergency. He forfeited his security deposit. Hawthorne had multiple credit cards under different names. He had bank accounts in 3 states. But after March 15th, all activity stopped. He wasn't using his cards. He wasn't accessing his accounts. He had either left the country or gone completely underground. Reyes worked the case for 6 months. She coordinated with FBI, with police departments in Oregon, Nevada, and Arizona. She interviewed dozens of women. She built a comprehensive profile of Robert James Hawthorne's operations. But she couldn't find him. Then, on September 8, 2023, U.S. Marshals arrested a man at a bus station in Spokane, Washington. He was using the name James Richardson. He had grown a beard and lost weight, but facial recognition confirmed his identity. Robert James Hawthorne was extradited to Los Angeles to face murder charges in Sophia Chen's death. The trial began in March 2024, exactly 1 year after Sophia's murder. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. DNA found in the Laurel Canyon rental house, cell phone records, testimony from Amanda Price and 5 other women who had escaped, financial records showing the elaborate infrastructure of fake identities. Hawthorne's defense attorney argued circumstantial evidence, insisted that while his client had perhaps engaged in fraud and identity theft, there was no direct proof he had murdered anyone. The prosecution countered with toxicology reports, expert testimony about strangulation, and most damning, evidence found in a storage unit Hawthorne had rented under another fake name. Inside the unit, investigators found souvenirs, driver's licenses from 7 women, jewelry, clothing, photographs, including items belonging to Sophia Chen and Jessica Martinez. The jury deliberated for 4 days. They found Robert James Hawthorne guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Sophia Chen and Jessica Martinez. They found him guilty of 7 counts of attempted murder, 9 counts of fraud, and 16 counts of identity theft. On June 12, 2024, he was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. This predator spent nearly 2 decades perfecting his system, Detective Reyes said after the sentencing. He targeted the most vulnerable people imaginable. Young women with dreams, away from home, desperate for their big break. He exploited every vulnerability. What saved us was the women who survived and found the courage to come forward. Lynn and James Chen sat in the courtroom throughout the trial. They heard every detail of their daughter's final days. They looked at photographs of her body. They listened to Amanda Price describe her near escape. They cried when the guilty verdict was read. "We will never have her back," Lynn Chen said outside the courthouse. "But at least he cannot hurt anyone else now. That is the only justice we can ask for." The case prompted changes in how law enforcement handles missing persons cases involving young women in Los Angeles. It highlighted the predatory nature of the entertainment industry's fringes, where scammers and criminals exploit dreams for profit and violence. Multiple advocacy organizations now provide resources for young people moving to Los Angeles, warning signs to watch for, safety protocols to follow. Sophia Chen's story became a cautionary tale, repeated in acting classes and film schools, shared among young women pursuing creative careers, not to discourage dreams, but to arm dreamers with knowledge, to teach them that legitimate managers don't invite you to their homes. Legitimate opportunities don't require isolation. Trust your instincts. Tell someone where you're going. No dream is worth your safety. Marcus Webb struggled with guilt for years afterward. He wondered if he could have stopped her, if he should have flown to Los Angeles sooner, if he should have been more forceful in his warnings. Therapy helped him understand that Sophia's death was not his fault. It was the fault of a predator who had spent years refining his methods. "She was brilliant and talented and kind," he said. "She would have made it legitimately. She had the talent. She just ran into evil before she got her chance." The Hollywood Hills remain beautiful and treacherous. The hiking trails are crowded every morning with people pursuing wellness and the perfect Instagram shot. The entertainment industry continues to draw thousands of hopeful young people every year. the aspiring dreamers who believe their talent and determination will be enough. Sometimes it is. Sometimes dreams come true in Los Angeles. Sometimes persistence pays off, and talent gets recognized, and hard work leads to success. But sometimes, predators wait in the spaces between aspiration and achievement, dressed in expensive clothes and armed with professional-looking websites. They know how to identify vulnerability. They know how to exploit hope. Sophia Chen deserved better than the death she received. She deserved the career she worked for. She deserved the life she had planned. Her story serves as a reminder that the cost of dreams can be terrifyingly high, and that evil often arrives wearing a smile and offering exactly what you want most. Her parents visit her grave every Sunday. They bring flowers and tell her about their week. They talk about what she would have accomplished. They remember her performances in the living room, her determination, her light. They carry her with them, along with the unbearable knowledge that the city that promised her everything delivered only tragedy. In the storage unit where Robert James Hawthorne kept his souvenirs, investigators found a folder containing Sophia's headshots. The professional ones that cost her $800. The ones that were supposed to launch her career. Instead, they had marked her as prey. The beautiful photos of a young woman who believed she was building her future, unaware that she was walking toward her end.